What happens if a rocket explodes in flight?
If you're a fan of the space industry, then you know about SpaceX. They are the company that has more or less revolutionized things by focusing on making parts for spacecraft themselves and making reusable rockets that'll allow them to save time and energy on a wide variety of things. On the surface, it may seem like they're just slightly adjusting the process, but it's honestly a lot more than that, and that's why they're so ahead in their projections, and will likely accomplish their goal of reaching Mars. So with that in mind, allow us to show you how SpaceX builds their rockets. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
When you dream about space businesses, what do you see as possible 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, as viable space businesses that it's hard for us to see because they're not there?
Number 9. The birth of SpaceX. To fully understand how SpaceX makes their rockets, we honestly have to understand how SpaceX was made in the first place. And that all begins and arguably will end with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is one of the richest men in the world, and a man who truly believes in trying to make space travel not just the future, but the present. He founded SpaceX in 2002 to try to make space travel better, cheaper, and more accessible, and beyond. And as the SpaceX website loves to boast, since 2002, we've had quite a few successes. SpaceX has gained worldwide attention for a series of historic milestones.
Assuming that we fulfill the president's vision and we establish a moon base and then go on and establish a Mars base, I think supplying those bases is a huge, huge business.
It is the only private company capable of returning a spacecraft from low Earth orbit, which it first accomplished in 2010. The company made history again in 2012 when its Dragon spacecraft became the first commercial spacecraft to deliver cargo to and from the International Space Station. SpaceX successfully achieved the historic first reflight of an orbital-class rocket in 2017, and the company now regularly launches flight-proven rockets. In 2018, SpaceX began launching Falcon Heavy, the world's most powerful operational rocket by a factor of 2. This says nothing of their 2020 exploits, including the first manned mission in one of their crafts, both to space and back. You have to understand, when Elon made SpaceX back in the early 2000s, there was very little faith in space travel. But now, NASA, and others have been invigorated to try and do things to push boundaries and get them to Mars and beyond. And that means making better rockets and doing it for cheaper.
I was able to figure out how to get the cost of the spacecraft down and the communications and the little greenhouse and everything, but the one thing I couldn't compress was the cost to launch, because there are only a few options, and the US options are way too expensive.
Number 8. How to make a better and cheaper rocket. Elon Musk is a futurist. He believes in trying to make the future happen as soon as possible, and when he started to formulate his plan for SpaceX, SpaceX wasn't even a thought in his mind. Rather, he was trying to push the idea that humanity could go to the planet Mars and habitate it, which in the early 2000s was still believed to be space fantasy. NASA had gotten a massive budget cut, so Elon decided to put his money where his mouth was and try to get NASA more by inspiring a new space race. Part of his plan was to go to Russia and buy up the rockets to use for his plan with NASA. The problem was that the Russians wouldn't sell to him, but ironically, this gave him his idea. He realized that he didn't need Russia, or technically even the US, to help him and his vision go to Mars. All he needed was a company to make it happen. A company that he himself could own, operate, and make the right calls without any bureaucracy. As he started to formulate that plan, he realized an interesting truth about building rockets and spaceships. The price wasn't nearly as high as NASA and other government-powered agencies were stating, mainly because they were importing all the materials. But if his company could build everything in-house, the cost of building rockets would plummet, and they'd have a better gross profit margin. Thus, SpaceX was born. But how exactly do they make their rockets so good?
2001, was talking to a friend of mine, and he asked me what I was going to do after PayPal, and I thought, well, I was wondering, I'd like to get involved in space, but I just didn't think there was anything I could do as an individual.
Number 7. Octaweb structure. The metal octaweb structure that houses the Merlin engines is vital to the Falcon 9's first stage. Earlier versions of the rocket had 9 engines arranged in 3 rows of 3. With the octaweb, 8 engines are clustered in a circle around the central one. The different engine arrangement is more than just aesthetic. The octaweb reduces the length and weight of the Falcon 9 thrust structure, simplifying the rocket's design and assembly. Streamlining the manufacturing process ultimately keeps launch costs down. This is key because any adjustments or tweaks to streamline things is what help keeps things from exploding in cost and assembly time, a thing that has hurt NASA and others in the past.
We subsequently made a lot of changes, improvements.
Number 6. Interstage. An interstage is vital to any multi-stage rocket. The The section connects the first and second stages and also houses the engine of the second stage, protecting it during the first phases of flight. At the right moment, the interstage separates the two stages, allowing the second stage to fire safely. This is called the moment of staging. Separating rocket stages can be a tricky business, but the Falcon 9 makes it simpler. While the majority of rockets use a complicated prototechnic system of explosive bolts to separate stages, SpaceX uses an all-pneumatic stage separation system. This system can be tested on the ground, and also means staging is less jarring to the rocket, which again can be a huge thing because, as NASA and even SpaceX has shown, if even one thing goes wrong with a rocket, it can cause great devastation. The last thing SpaceX needs is to have something go wrong between stages, and thus its construction of the go-between is vital. Number 5. The Merlin engine. The power behind the Falcon 9 is the Merlin engine, which is built in-house by SpaceX. This was outlined earlier as part of SpaceX's place to both save money and do things more effectively. The Merlin engine is one of their crowning achievements of that philosophy. The rocket boasts 9 of these engines clustered together in the first stage, while the second stage contains a single Merlin that's modified to fire in the vacuum of space. These engines burn a combustion of rocket-grade kerosene called Rocket Propellant 1 and liquid oxygen. On a typical Falcon 9 launch, the first stage engines burn for 162 seconds, and the second stage engine burns for 397 seconds. The Merlin engine is incredibly powerful and one of the most effective engines ever built. Having 9 of them in the first stage also offers some built-in safety. On other rockets, if an engine fails during launch, the lost thrust can destroy the payload's chance of successfully reaching orbit. But the Falcon 9 is designed so that 2 of the 9 Merlin engines in the first stage can fail, and the launch won't be affected. The healthy engines can burn longer, picking up the slack to save the mission.
So what we're looking at over there, that's a quarter section of the Falcon 9 17-foot diameter fairing. It's 17-foot diameter and obviously and 50 feet long.
Number 4. Horizontal Integration Facility. SpaceX doesn't build the Falcon 9 in Florida. It's just assembled there. Most of the rocket's parts are built elsewhere, notably on the other side of the U.S. in the company's factory in Hawthorne, California. This means the components, including fuselages and engines, need to travel around the U.S. by truck to various test stands before eventually ending up at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Once in Florida, the pieces are matted together in SpaceX's custom-built Horizontal Integration Facility, a large hangar within sight of Launch Pad 39A.
Stage 1 is transonic.
Stage 1 is past the speed of sound. It's now subsonic.
Landing burn startup.
Number 3. First stage landing. The most exciting part of any Falcon 9 launch might be the landing, specifically that of the first stage onto a floating barge. The Falcon 9's first stage includes 4 small carbon fiber landing legs stowed flat against its fuselage. After the rocket goes through staging, the first stage begins its fall through the atmosphere. Cold gas thrusters near the top flip the rocket around so it's upright. Then the stage engine fires briefly, just enough to slow its fall. As the stage approaches its target, the legs deploy. In the very final phases of its descent, 3 of the 9 Merlin engines fire one last time for what SpaceX calls the boost back burn. The stage slows even further, almost hovering as if it makes a soft touchdown. This landing sequence is entirely automated, with the rocket stage responding to real-time data.
Reusability is incredibly important to space exploration. 1, it helps with cost savings, and 2, it helps with time. If every time you had to build a new vehicle, we would be waiting and waiting and waiting for a new rocket to be produced.
Number 2. Post-flight. After its successful landing, the Falcon 9's first stage is returned to the Horizontal Integration Facility, where it can be checked out, refurbished, and readied for another launch. Reusing the stage is much cheaper than building a new one for every launch. The SES-10 mission in March 2017 was the first time a core stage of an orbit-capable rocket has been reused, and the cost was substantially less than half of what it would have cost to build a brand new stage. Number 1. Developing new parts. Another key element of the SpaceX program is their different parts and engines they're making, like the Raptor engine, which has been tested rigorously in the past year or so. They're pushing to get things bigger and better so they can achieve their goal of reaching Mars and beyond, because while the engines they have now are great, they're not good enough for the mission to come. And so they keep building, keep tinkering, keep trying to make things better so they'll reach their goals. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at SpaceX and how everything just came together for them, but how they're changing the game in terms of rockets and development space travel? Do you think that with everything that SpaceX has done, that they're well and truly going to reach Mars like they want? Do you think that other space agencies will go and do similar things? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.